Well, we've really been stressing him in practice. We've really been stressing. It was interesting. The last couple of weeks, really been putting an emphasis on tip balls, and that haphazardly happened Saturday. So just when the balls are tipped, being able to get interceptions at critical times, being able to go for the ball when the ball is available to try to get a fumble or a turnover. That happened last game. So we've been stressing it in practice. Obviously, whatever you do in practice usually shows up in the game, and they've been able to do that. So really just stressing it and making a big deal out of it when it happens in practice and when it doesn't happen in practice. Other than that, it's they've been good at really going for the ball and understanding that turnovers create great opportunities for our offense. So we've done a good job with that.
Keenan do his reps at Jack, and how did you find his reps at Power?
Yeah, it was tough on him, doing both. To be honest with you, there was a lot of moving parts. Looking back on it, we probably put a little much on him at the Jack position. But I thought he handled it really, really well. I think the more he plays a little bit of the Jack role, I think the more consistent he'll be in terms of performance. But he's a really, really good player, and we just got to make sure that we don't overload him at both. He'll obviously be able to play both. We have to have him in that role now that Noah's out. But we've got to make sure that the reps on game day correspond percentage-wise with the same amount of reps he would get at the power end or Jack position in practice. Meaning, if he's going to play 80% in practice at power end, we got to make sure we're really good about giving him 80% of those reps in practice and 20% of the other. And I think we probably did a little more of the 50-50 world with him last week. So we need to back off on that a little bit, but he's a productive player no matter where you put him. We just have to be very judicious about how we, give him reps and get him ready.
How different are the roles at power end versus Jack? And are they big enough that it's good to have an IQ guy like him?
Yeah, it is. He really is a very smart football player, and it is different. There's some things that are very similar, but just if you just start from the obvious, one of them you have your hand in the ground, and one of them you're standing up in a two-point stance. So that in itself makes it different. And then the job descriptions, some are the same. There's carryover, and then some of them are a lot different because you have some coverage elements in there that you don't necessarily always have at power end. So that makes it a little bit different.
What did you see from the defensive line on tape that you liked or didn't like with the new group, new personnel, kind of building on that?
Yeah. I don't feel like it was our best game just as a front seven, period. I don't feel like it was our best game. I feel like we could have been more firm at the point of attack. I feel like we could have been better in terms of, gap control. We pointed that out yesterday to our defense. It was not what we wanted, and we have to play much better this week in terms of gap control. So it was not our best game up front. Yes, we were playing and rotating some other guys in there and some new guys, and we had to, as we mentioned earlier about Kamen Rucker having to play a couple different positions now. So we do have some moving parts up there, but just technique-wise and doing the things that we have to do structurally within the defense, it was not our best game, and we need to improve.
How do you get more pressure on the passer?
Well, obviously, when we pressure out of our dime stuff, we usually get good pressure there. What we had to be careful of this past week was the quarterback scrambles and the quarterback draws, because he was so athletic and he was hurting so many people with that it was more of a controlled pass rush and really kind of building a quarterback trap. Because what we didn't want to do is wake up on Sunday and feel like he ran the quarterback draw or he scrambled and got away from any pressure that we had and extended the plays or got first downs on his own. So it was more of that was a little bit different of a world for us in making sure that we kept him in the pocket. So that did cut down a little bit on our pressure and the way we were able to pressure, because when you run up the field on those guys, bad things can happen. But we definitely have to get more pressure with four-man pass rush. And where we have to get more pressure is on the non-obvious passing downs. That's where we have to get more pressure, whether it's a four-man rush or adding a fifth guy or a sixth guy into the rush. We haven't been great at it, and we have to get better at it.
Gene, is there any inclination just with what you're asking Javari to do and what you're asking Kane to do to say, you know what, let's just stick these guys in one spot. Let's stick, for instance, Ritzy at power end and Kamen at Jack. I mean, is there any inclination just in terms of us simplifying for those guys? I mean, is that something you've thought about? Like, you know what, maybe we'll just put this guy here and this guy here and we'll see what happens. Like, is that?
Yes, those are definitely conversations that happen, without a doubt. Sometimes you have to go against what you know would be great, and it would be great to have that luxury. Sometimes you don't have that, and then sometimes you go out there with a plan, like moving guys and making them play a couple of different positions. And then you start realizing that, maybe we can tweak that a little bit and get them more efficient at one role more so than two roles. So we have to always go back and evaluate that. But those are definitely discussions. Obviously, you would love to have the luxury of just putting players at one spot. And we always try to do that to the best of our ability. But in the same sense, during game weeks, sometimes it just requires that you have to move some guys around. Our case was because of injury, obviously. And then you kind of move from there, right? You adapt and adjust based on the production that you see. But those are all valid discussions that happen, yes.
Mac told us right after the game Saturday, and he was saying it again today, that he expects it to be, I don't know if better product is the right word, but just things to be better because, like, Kanan didn't practice last week. Like, because I don't know if you're settling into this new normal type deal on defense with who's in and who's out. Like, I mean, do you expect it to be a better deal this week, just working through everything and knowing where people,
right,
who you got available?
I do. That was really the first week that we had to play without, two edge guys that we've had all year, and we've had a really solid rotation going on. So, we had to kind of feel what that was going to look like. And now that we've got a game under our belt to see, look, how productive was this guy here? How productive was this guy there? Now we kind of move on and try to figure out what the best of all those worlds are. We didn't know what they were going to be because it was the first time we've had to do it. So, I expect it to be better this week, to answer your question, yes.
Do you have an idea on how many snaps guys can hold during a game going in, or is it just kind of Travis Shaw's out there, he's looking tired, let's get him out? I mean, how does that work, especially with the injuries there?
Yeah, so every week we have a plan on what we think numbers-wise is going to be the best advantage for us, right, in terms of keeping guys fresh. Everything starts with the defensive line first. Those are the guys that, have 650 pounds of double teams on them a lot of times on the inside, right? So we start with how many reps we want those guys to be able to take and be able to keep them fresh. And we go in with this game plan, and typically we are pretty close to what we want to do with the interior guys. The defensive end, the power ends and the jacks, we've had to balance that out now with some injuries that have happened. Before this past week, we had a set number that we felt good about, and now we've kind of had to recalibrate that because of the obvious. And then at linebacker and in the secondary, we do the same thing, right? Like, how many plays, can we expect these guys to still, be productive and keep them healthy, and there's a fine line in there, particularly at linebacker. It's just a position that we're thin at for sure, and we would like them to play, less reps if possible. But that's a hard one, right? So, we're able to get Power Eccles off the field sometimes in the dime world. Ced's the one that's been the Iron Man. I mean, he's played a lot of plays, and we have to try to find ways to give him some relief. But there's always a pitch count, so to speak, with pretty much every position before the week starts.
said post-game Saturday that they went tempo, and they haven't really shown tempo at times. How much of that is guys having to each game get into the flow of the game? I mean, how do you base those adjustments and the need for those adjustments each week?
Yes, it has. There's been some games when there's been a lot of adjustments needed at halftime, and this past week was a great example. They had some players out. They had some key injuries, so they went to a completely different idea of how they were going to keep the ball and move the ball, and that it was different than what we basically had prepared for most of the week. It was interesting when you go back and look at the things we prepared for from the week. We really executed well on defense. The things that we weren't expecting, we had to do some adjusting, and we weren't always in the right spots early in the game. So there was quite a bit of adjusting that we had to do, and we've had to do that a couple of different games. But it all just depends on, is the game flowing and them doing things based on what we've seen before? And if it is, then the game plan usually flows right. There's always some adjustments you make at halftime, but some games more than others, and Saturday was an example of that for sure.
Wake's offense has run into some trouble in the last couple weeks, especially with turnovers. From what you've seen, what did Louisville and NC State do to them to sort of get them off kilter?
A lot of pressuring. I think both of them went to some high pressure stuff. Both of them did a really, really good job of penetration, bringing different pressures from different places. Again, it's interesting how different teams decide to attack this offensive scheme. It's very unique. I've never seen it before, but it's very productive and makes a lot of sense. It's tough. It's really, really hard. And different guys have different ideas, but the last 2 weeks, I think the main event has been the pressures have caused the turnovers for the most part.
I was going to ask you I was going to jump on that one too. I mean, does that become priority number one for you guys? I mean, in terms of getting to Hartman, I mean, he's obviously so good and so experienced. I mean, there's not much he hasn't seen.
Right.
But it's, the way these last two teams have been able to get after him, I mean, does that become priority number one for your defense, is getting back there and getting in his face and trying to keep this, what he's going through happening?
Well, I think a couple of things. Number one, you have to do, again, within your scheme, what you do. I think any time that you put pressure on a quarterback, that always, it could be feast or famine. Again, it can be very productive, but you have to, if you're going to do that and you're going to live by that, Louisville does that every snap to everybody. I mean, that's kind of who they are and what they do. NC State does a good bit of that as well. It's kind of who they are. And so within the structure of what you do, I think anytime you can get pressure on a quarterback, that's always going to help your case. But you got to be able to live on the perimeter with whatever happens when they throw the ball up to 6'4" and 6'5" guys, right? So that's why it's such a really interesting scheme, because they do a great job of really reading and getting one-on-ones where they want to get one-on-ones, and then they can expose you there. And so that's why they've scored a lot of points. But it's a great scheme. But, yeah, anytime you can get pressure, within what you do, I think it's, it helps for sure.
See anything different out of Storm Duck last night?
I think Storm's playing with a lot of confidence, and I'm really, really glad to see that. He played well again this game. I know people would point to, a ball that got away on him, a deep ball that got away on him, but I think overall, he's been really productive. Obviously, he had a pick Saturday. He played really well in coverage. Again, the one deep ball got out on him, but when you look at the way he finished the Pitt game, when you look at the way he played 95% of the time Saturday, I think he's gaining the confidence that he needs, right? I feel like he's starting to really come on, and this is a great time of the year for him to be gaining that confidence, but he's been playing better, and I'm really proud of him, and hopefully he's gonna continue to do that. He needs to do that this week for sure. These are great receivers, so we're going to need him to be hitting on all cylinders this weekend.
You guys good?
Awesome, guys. Thank you all.